I wanted to prank my fiancée, so I hid under our bed with a camera. But she walked in with a man, kissing him and whispering, "We've got an hour to do everything. Think we'll make it?" When they fell onto the bed right above me. I had no intention of discovering anything life-changing that afternoon. I only planned to pull a harmless prank on my fiancée, something simple and stupid that would shake off the heaviness that had taken over the last few weeks. Jenna had been tense from wedding planning, and I thought a small scare prank would break the pressure and let us laugh at ourselves. The idea came to me when I was sorting through old storage boxes and found my tiny camera, the one I used when making silly videos with friends years ago. I charged it, set it to record, and tested the angle. Everything looked fine. The plan was straightforward. Jenna had told me she was going for a manicure appointment, something she usually dragged out longer than necessary. I assumed I had at least an hour and a half before she got back. That gave me plenty of time to set up the camera under the bed frame, climb under the mattress, and wait for her to walk in. The prank would be simple. As soon as she walked closer to the bed, I would reach a hand out or shuffle the sheets. When she leaned down to inspect, I would slide out and scare her. She was jumpy. She startled when someone opened a soda can too fast. The prank would hit. I made sure everything looked natural. The comforter fell the same way it always did. The pillows were in their usual messy layout. The room looked untouched. I washed my hands of dust, checked the hallway, and crouched down to slide myself under the bed. It had been years since I had fit into tight spaces, and my shoulders brushed against the wood frames on both sides, but I managed to twist my body enough to settle in the center. A small line of light stretched across the floor from the bedroom window. I could only see the carpet fibers and the shadow of the nightstand legs. I kept the camera positioned near my ribs, recording upward through a small gap in the bed slats. I started getting comfortable, breathing slow and controlled, amused by how ridiculous the whole thing was. The prank was childish, but I felt Jenna needed something lighthearted after weeks of tension. She had been exhausted from work, irritated by vendors, impatient with every friend who tried to help her. I wanted something innocent to shake her out of the drill of deadlines. About 15 minutes passed. I expected another hour before hearing her keys in the front door. I nearly drifted into a half-doze when I heard the sound of a car door slam outside. It felt too close to be a neighbor's. I tilted my head slightly. Footsteps hit the porch. The front lock clicked. She was early, much earlier than expected. I held my breath, bracing myself for the prank to begin before I was mentally ready. I pictured her walking in alone, still distracted by her appointment, maybe complaining about chipped polish as she tossed her bag onto the couch. I was preparing to slow my breathing when I heard something that didn't fit the picture at all. The unmistakable, muffled laugh of a man. Then the scuff of two people entering, not one. The bedroom door didn't open immediately. They lingered in the hallway. The man's voice was low, vague through the walls, but his tone wasn't casual. I couldn't understand the words, but the cadence told me everything. There was familiarity, closeness, and excitement in it. They weren't walking like coworkers. They weren't walking like friends. The door swung open. Jenna's footsteps moved inside first. The man followed close behind. My eyelids tightened when I heard them kiss. It wasn't a greeting kiss. There was hunger in the sound. The bed above me dipped slightly as Jenna sat down on it. The mattress creaked again when the man joined her. My pulse hammered so fast I felt it in my fingertips. A prank that had started with harmless intentions turned into a trap I couldn't escape. I could not move. I could not reveal myself without the situation erupting in a way that would put me directly in the middle of something I didn't understand. I stayed still, rigid beneath the bed frame. Jenna had never given me any sign of this. She was stressed, yes. She was moody, yes. But she had not acted distant enough to suggest she was involved with someone else. I listened, hoping I misread everything. Maybe he was a friend needing emotional support. Maybe she had brought him over to discuss something urgent. But the mattress shifted in a way that removed all doubt. The way they moved was intimate. She leaned against him. He wrapped his arms around her. They weren't talking like friends. She murmured that they had an hour, that he needed to hurry before I got home. She said it casually, like someone speaking about a predictable pattern, as if she had rehearsed the schedule of my life, so well she could carve out time for someone else without risk. She talked about my made-up volunteer shift, a shift she had invented somewhere along the way to explain why I would be unreachable. The weight of betrayal settled over me slowly, like sand filling my lungs. My prank had trapped me inside a moment I never would have believed without seeing or hearing it myself. As they lay across the bed, their conversation slipped into something even more alarming. He pressed her about a decision she had promised to make. She speculated about how much longer she could play along before I noticed anything. She wondered how quickly she could get me to commit financially to one final piece of her plan. I didn't understand the details yet, but the intent was unmistakable. I wasn't a partner. I was a resource. He asked her whether she had told me about the move she was planning after New Year. She laughed in a way I had never heard before, not soft, not playful, but dismissive. She said she would handle me soon. I couldn't see their faces, but I recognized the shift in her voice. She was already living in a world where I wasn't part of her long-term picture. I felt the camera shift slightly against my ribs as I breathed. The lens pointed upward toward the slats and the underside of the mattress. I didn't know what to do. Every option felt impossible. If I moved, I would expose myself. If I stayed, I risked being stepped on, crushed, or discovered in the most humiliating way imaginable. The mattress rocked again as they moved across it. They weren't careful. They weren't quiet. They fell onto the bed fully, and I felt the pressure of both bodies above me. The wood creaked. Dust dropped into my hair. The bed legs trembled. I never imagined I would hear something like this while hiding beneath the person I planned to marry. Then things grew worse. During their shifting, Jenna's knee or foot pushed the comforter, which slid across the bed. The sheet folded awkwardly, catching a corner of the camera. I watched in disbelief as the device rolled several inches toward the open edge of the bed. The small plastic body slid almost silently across the wood support. The camera approached the open side. I couldn't grab it without revealing myself. I tried to shift the weight of my shoulder against the slats, hoping friction would slow the slide. My heart pounded so violently I feared the bed would pick it up through vibrations. The camera reached the edge. For a moment, it balanced there, half on the frame, half hanging. I thought gravity would take it down. I imagined it falling onto the carpet where either Jenna or the man would immediately see it. The entire prank would collapse into a nightmare I couldn't contain. But the bed moved again, this time from a forceful motion above. The shift caused the sheet to fall over part of the frame, trapping the camera underneath. It remained partially hidden, pressed between cloth and wood. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't process the relief or the terror. I was alive beneath a collapsing world. The man spoke again, growing impatient. Jenna reassured him. They whispered about what they needed to finish before the hour ran out. He asked again about her timeline. She made vague promises. She hinted she needed me for something important before she could leave. He asked what she planned to do if I refused. She muttered something that made his tone drop cold. I couldn't make out the exact phrasing, but the intent was clear. She believed she could push me into agreeing with whatever she wanted. My joints ached. Sweat rolled down my temples. Air beneath the bed felt thin. The wood above me shook again. At that moment, as they shifted positions, the sheet snagged on something and rolled back slightly. The camera slid out in full view. The man's foot hit the floor seconds later. He saw it. He picked it up. The room fell silent. I expected everything to crash into chaos. I expected him to kneel and check the shadows beneath the bed. Instead, he turned to Jenna and demanded to know why she was filming him. She turned defensive. The argument erupted. Accusations shot back and forth. Neither suspected for a moment that I was beneath them, listening to every word. Their voices grew louder. Their frustration sharpened. They left the room mid-fight, slamming the door on their way out. And that was my escape. I crawled out the moment their footsteps faded, grabbed the essentials from the dresser, and slipped out the back door without making a sound. When I stepped out the back door, the winter air hit me so sharply it felt like a slap. I had no plan. My mind ran with the speed of someone trying to outrun a disaster he didn't fully understand. I reached my car, sat inside, and locked the doors even though no one was around. My hands shook as I tried to put the key into the ignition. I had used the back exit before only when taking out trash. Now it felt like an emergency escape route from a house that no longer felt like mine. I didn't start the car yet. I placed my phone on the passenger seat and tried to breathe normally. Everything I had heard under that bed kept replaying in a nonstop loop. Their voices, their movement, the plans they whispered, the ridiculous timing, the way Jenna talked about using me for something I still didn't understand. I thought about driving far from the neighborhood and hiding somewhere until my head cleared, but the idea felt cowardly. I kept hearing my own heartbeat, as if the whole car vibrated with it. After a few minutes of sitting in complete silence, I realized I was still holding the tiny camera. I looked down at it, almost afraid to press play. It felt like a live grenade. I didn't watch it. Not yet. I needed clarity before I could stomach a full replay. Instead, I turned the car on and pulled out of the driveway slowly, trying not to attract attention. As I reached the end of the block, my mind reached for something, anything, that made sense. Jenna had always been unpredictable with stress. She became impulsive, sometimes irrational. But betrayal wasn't part of her patterns. Or at least I had believed that. Now I saw that her sudden mood swings had never been related to stress alone. They were tied to the chaos she was secretly living. I didn't want to confront her in the house. That would end badly, with Miles nearby and Jenna becoming defensive enough to lie until she twisted the truth into something unrecognizable. My mind went to someone who might know what was going on, someone who might have noticed something I overlooked. Her mother, Ruth. Ruth had always played the role of a calm, guiding presence. She complimented my stability more than my personality. She often told me that Jenna needed someone who could keep her grounded, a comment that used to feel flattering until I realized there were layers beneath it. If Ruth had known anything beforehand, she would never have told me directly, but I hoped she would slip, even if unintentionally. I drove to her house. It took 15 minutes, and I rehearsed my opening sentence the entire way. I didn't want to explode on her. I wanted information. I needed answers before everything spiraled further. When I rang the doorbell, Ruth opened the door almost immediately, as if she had been standing nearby. She greeted me with a surprised expression, the kind that wasn't fake but wasn't innocent either. I stepped inside when she moved aside without hesitation. I didn't start with accusations. I didn't tell her I had been under the bed while Jenna brought another man home. Instead, I started with something mild. I told her Jenna had come home earlier than expected and wasn't alone. Ruth's face tightened in a way I didn't expect. She didn't look shocked. She looked annoyed. Not at me. At Jenna. I asked her if she knew who the man was. She didn't lie convincingly. She said Jenna had been struggling and might have made impulsive decisions. She said pressure sometimes made Jenna latch onto people. Then she said something that knocked the air out of my lungs. She thought Jenna had ended it with the other one months ago. I asked her what she meant. She froze. It happened so quickly she didn't have time to create a cover story. When she tried to rephrase, it sounded even worse. She admitted that Jenna had dated someone else before I proposed, someone she wasn't sure about, someone she had supposedly cut off completely. But if I had just caught her with Miles, then who was the other one? The second plot twist hit me with such force it felt like stepping off a moving train. Jenna wasn't juggling one man behind my back. She had been juggling at least two, possibly more. I didn't know whether Ruth meant a long-term relationship or a temporary one. But the moment she admitted that she knew about someone else entirely, the last pieces of Jenna's recent behavior clicked into place. All those nights, she said she was helping her sister. All the sudden wardrobe changes. All the unexplainable disappearances. All the warm messages from unknown numbers she swore were co-workers. Ruth hadn't directly encouraged cheating, but she had known Jenna was unstable and made no effort to tell me anything. She said something else, something that burned through my chest like fire. Jenna was trying to secure her future by making responsible choices, and sometimes responsible choices required backup plans. I realized in that moment that I wasn't a partner to Jenna. I was a safety net. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I simply stared at Ruth until she started fidgeting. After a long pause, she asked me what exactly I saw when Jenna arrived home. She clearly wanted to know how much damage she needed to manage. Before I could answer, I saw movement through the window behind her. A familiar car pulled into the driveway with violent urgency. The headlights cut across the living room walls. The engine shut off. A car door slammed hard. Jenna stepped out. She had driven straight here from the house. She walked toward the door with the speed of someone ready to put out a fire. She saw my car. She saw the front door open. She froze when she reached the porch, trying to understand why I was in her mother's home at all. Ruth stepped aside instinctively, as if she expected the confrontation to explode through the doorway. Jenna looked furious and terrified at the same time. She asked me what I was doing there, why I left the house, why I didn't call her. She rambled with a confidence she hadn't earned anymore. I asked her who the man in our home was. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse her of anything dramatic. I simply asked flat out who he was. She stopped talking. Her silence told me everything. Ruth demanded to know why Jenna had someone else in the house. Jenna exploded, saying I misunderstood something, that I wasn't supposed to be home, that it wasn't what it looked like. Her excuses came so rapidly, she couldn't hold them together. Then the real chaos began. While Jenna tried to pull me aside to speak privately, another car turned into the street. It slowed down as if the driver was unsure he had found the right house. Then it parked near the curb. The man stepped out. Miles. Jenna had texted him during their argument, and he followed her here, still heated from what happened in the bedroom. He looked around, saw me, saw Ruth, saw Jenna, and everything snapped in his posture. He demanded to know why Jenna had brought me here. He asked her directly what I knew, what she had told me, and why the camera was recording. Ruth yelled at Jenna, demanding answers from her daughter. Jenna screamed at both men to stop. Miles accused her of using him. I accused her of lying about everything in our life together. Ruth accused her of destroying her own future. Jenna's face twisted into something I had never seen before. Fear mixed with anger, panic mixed with entitlement. She tried to grab my arm, but Ruth blocked her. The entire scene spiraled into a loud, tangled mess of voices, accusations, and realizations. And then, Through all the noise, another voice cut through, one I recognized but hadn't expected. From across the street, Jenna's sister Ava stepped onto her porch, staring at the chaos. She had clearly heard the shouting. She crossed the driveway quickly, looking furious. She pointed at Jenna and said she was done covering for her. She said she was tired of lying to me about where Jenna was. She said she had kept her quiet long enough. And that was the moment everything collapsed for Jenna. She realized every single person who once shielded her had turned around at the same time. The tension around us grew heavier and sharper, like the moment before something irreversible snaps. This was the escalation. This was the point of no return. Jenna's silence in the middle of that driveway felt heavier than the shouting that came before it. For the first time since everything began unraveling, she had no ready-made answer, no convenient excuse, no polished version of events she could toss at someone to manipulate the room back into her control. She stood between Miles, Ruth, Ava, and me, trapped in a storm she created but never believed would reach her. Ruth was the first to break the silence. Her voice didn't sound like the calm mother she always pretended to be. It carried disappointment sharp enough to pull the air out of the scene. She asked Jenna to explain the truth clearly for once. She didn't ask politely. She demanded it. Jenna's shoulders tensed. She looked at each of us as if searching for the safest angle to take, but none existed anymore. She started speaking, but instead of forming a complete explanation, she slipped into sentences that contradicted themselves. She claimed she wasn't cheating. She claimed she was confused. She claimed she was pressured. She claimed I wasn't supposed to be home. The moment she said that last part, Miles snapped. He stepped forward and asked her why she told him I had been leaving the house every evening for weeks. He said she insisted my schedule kept me far away and that today was supposed to be another predictable day. Ava shook her head in disbelief. She glared at Jenna like someone who had been carrying secrets longer than anyone else in the yard. She told Jenna she was sick of covering for her late-night disappearances, sick of lying to protect her, sick of being forced into playing the supportive sister while Jenna tore through people's lives without any remorse. I watched Ava's expression harden. She wasn't angry for my sake alone. She was angry because Jenna had built her chaos on the backs of everyone who tried to care about her. I asked again who the other one was. Jenna's face twisted with panic. She said nothing at first. She tried to swallow her words like a child caught doing something forbidden. But the tension around her kept building, and eventually she muttered something about a complicated situation that happened before our engagement. That wasn't an answer. That was another attempt to dodge the truth. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I stepped closer and asked why her mother believed she had ended things with one man, yet she was bringing another into our home. I told her I needed the truth, not another distraction. She took a step back, trembling more from exposure than guilt. She finally admitted that before I proposed, she had been seeing someone else casually. She said she wasn't sure where her life was going, so she let several potential futures overlap. She acted as if this kind of overlap was normal, as if it was understandable for someone her age to experiment with different paths before settling down. Miles exploded. He told her she had told him I was only a temporary phase, that I was safe but boring, that she needed someone with more ambition, someone who would push her, someone who wouldn't settle for ordinary. That was the moment I realized the person she described to him wasn't me. It was a version of me she created to justify her actions. Ruth didn't defend Jenna. She didn't even scold her anymore. She simply stared at her with a coldness I had never seen. She asked her why she lied to her too. She asked why she pulled her into this mess when she had tried to help her build stability. Jenna shouted that she had done everything for her future. She said she was tired of feeling uncertain. She admitted she needed options. She didn't want to end up alone or stuck in a dull life. She accused all of us of trapping her, even though she was the one who orchestrated every part of her situation. Then the third plot twist hit, and it hit all of us at once. Miles stepped forward again and asked her why she told him she was pregnant. She froze instantly. I felt my heart slam against my chest. Ruth gasped. Ava covered her mouth. Everything in the yard stopped moving. He explained that just a week ago, Jenna told him she needed time to think because she might be expecting. She said she wasn't sure yet, but she wanted to prepare for the possibility. She didn't want to tell anyone until she sorted out her relationship plans. I stared at her, waiting for her to deny it. She didn't. Instead, she whispered that she was scared and didn't know how to handle it. Ruth demanded to know how many men she had told this to. Jenna didn't answer. She couldn't. Ava stepped closer and said Jenna had confided in her about it too. But Jenna had told her a completely different version, one that implied I might be the father. I felt my entire world tilt for a moment. Not because of the possibility of a pregnancy, but because Jenna had turned something that serious into another tool to manipulate everyone around her. She insisted she wasn't sure. She insisted she was overwhelmed. She insisted she was planning to tell me soon. But her insistence didn't matter anymore. Her choices had damaged every connection she had. Miles demanded clarity. Ruth demanded clarity. Ava demanded clarity. I demanded clarity. She gave none. The shouting grew so loud neighbors stepped onto their porches. A dog barked from another yard. Car headlights slowed as they passed. People could tell something heavy was happening. They didn't know the story, but they recognized the sound of something breaking. I couldn't stay there any longer. I told Jenna we needed to talk privately. Not to fix anything. Not to argue. But to end this in a way that wouldn't explode even further. She tried to follow me toward the driveway, but Ruth blocked her and demanded she stay until she cleaned up the mess she created. Ava joined Ruth, saying Jenna wasn't going anywhere until she explained everything she had put their family through. Miles stayed too, staring at Jenna as if seeing her for the first time. I walked away, not looking back. I needed air. I needed silence after the chaos that had swallowed the entire block. I reached my car, leaned on the door, and tried to steady my breathing. I heard footsteps behind me. I expected Jenna following me, but when I turned, I saw someone else. It was Harold, Jenna's father. He must have arrived during the shouting because his expression carried the weight of someone who had heard enough to understand everything without needing the details. He stood there quietly, taking in my expression. He asked me only one question, if I was leaving for good. I didn't hesitate. I told him yes. He nodded slowly, like a man who had seen something like this coming for years but hoped it wouldn't happen. Then he said he would handle the rest on his end, because Jenna wasn't going to drag me any deeper into her chaos. His tone wasn't angry. It was tired. He walked past me and headed toward the cluster of voices around the porch, ready to break apart whatever argument still remained. I got into my car and closed the door gently, trying not to draw more attention. I didn't start the car yet. I watched Harold step into the middle of the mess, raise his hand, and silence everyone instantly. I couldn't hear his words, but I could see the result. Miles took a step back. Ava stopped yelling. Ruth looked relieved, and Jenna collapsed into herself as if every wall she built had finally crumbled. I drove away quietly, leaving them in the cold glow of the porch light, knowing nothing about this story was ever going back to normal, and the real collapse was still coming. When I pulled into my driveway, the house looked unfamiliar, almost like a place I had borrowed from someone else. I stepped out of the car slowly, walked inside, and closed the door behind me without turning on any lights. The silence felt thick, as if the air itself was processing everything alongside me. I didn't sit. I didn't pace. I stood in the center of the living room and let the weight of the night settle into my body. I finally understood something Jenna never expected me to realize. She didn't fear losing me. She feared losing the stability I represented. The version of love she created was nothing more than a backup plan she intended to activate whenever she felt her other lives slipping out of her reach. I walked into the bedroom, the place where this entire disaster started. The sheets were still messy from when she and Miles had fallen onto them. The air still carried the faint smell of their perfume and cologne. The sight of the room made my stomach twist. I grabbed a pair of gloves from the closet and stripped the bed completely. I didn't want a single piece of fabric to remind me of what happened. I carried everything to the laundry room, stuffed it into the washer, and turned it on without checking the settings. The rumbling sound broke the suffocating quiet around me. Then I walked to the front door, locked it, and grabbed Jenna's spare key ring from the bowl where she always dropped it. I placed the keys into a small box with the rest of her things I had packed earlier. I added her clothes, her perfume bottles, her books, her planner, and anything else that belonged exclusively to her. I didn't touch sentimental items that were gifts from me. I left them in a separate drawer because I didn't want to deal with the emotional residue they carried. Once the boxes were sealed, I placed them neatly beside the door. It was nearly midnight when the pounding began. It wasn't a gentle knock. Someone hit the door with enough force to rattle the frame. When I checked the peephole, I saw Jenna standing there, her hair tangled from crying or arguing or both. Her jacket hung loosely on her shoulders. She looked desperate and exhausted. I didn't open the door. She kept knocking. Harder, longer, more frantic each time. I stood there quietly, watching her through the peephole without reacting. She eventually switched from knocking to calling my name. Then she tried to force an apology through the wood, insisting everything was misunderstood. She begged me to let her explain. She promised nothing I heard was true. She insisted I was overreacting. She claimed she needed me to open the door. I didn't. The knocking eventually stopped. When it resumed a minute later, the tone had changed. She demanded I come outside. She threatened to call her family. She told me I couldn't treat her like this. The irony nearly made me laugh. Then I heard a second voice. Ruth. She told Jenna to step away from the door. She told her she had made a complete mess of her life and needed to face reality. She said she was ashamed and tired of covering for her. Jenna's crying intensified. She begged her mother to help. Ruth didn't move. After several minutes of shouting between them, another voice cut in, Harold. He told them both to leave the property immediately because the situation had escalated enough for one night. His tone broke through Jenna's panic with the authority of someone who rarely interfered but always meant it when he did. The noise faded. Car doors slammed. Engine started. The driveway fell silent again. The next morning, messages flooded my phone. Some came from Jenna, some from unknown numbers, some from vendors I didn't realize she had contacted. I ignored all of them. I spent the early morning changing the locks and installing a new camera at the front door. I wanted distance. I wanted control. By noon, the consequences began unfolding like dominoes. First, the wedding venue called. Jenna had tried to claim that we decided to postpone the ceremony together. She asked for refunds and alterations without my approval. The event coordinator sensed something off and contacted me directly to confirm her story. I told them the truth. They froze her request immediately and asked me to sign the cancellation form myself. I did. Next came the florist. They had received a panicked email from Jenna claiming I had changed my mind about certain arrangements and wanted cheaper flowers. That wasn't true. She was trying to save money because she feared losing access to my finances. I sent the florist the same confirmation I gave the venue. Then the credit union reached out. Someone had attempted to initiate a loan inquiry associated with my name. They flagged the request because the information didn't match my usual patterns. Jenna must have tried to act fast before everything collapsed. The bank blocked her attempt instantly. I sent the footage from the camera as proof. Not to embarrass her, not to ruin her, but to protect my financial identity in case she tried to claim she had my permission. By the end of the day, Jenna's plans were falling apart from every direction. Miles called me that evening. He asked to meet in person. I agreed, not because I needed an apology, but because I needed the chapter to close fully. We met in a coffee shop near the highway. He looked devastated, not angry. He wasn't the villain in this story, only another person Jenna manipulated. He told me she had taken money from him to help her prepare for a future where I no longer existed. She assured him she would repay him after she secured her own stability, a stability she expected from me. He wanted closure too, so we exchanged information, made sure our stories aligned, and parted ways without resentment. In the days that followed, Jenna tried several times to regain control. She claimed I was being vindictive. She claimed the recordings were misunderstandings. She claimed Miles twisted the story. She tried to paint herself as confused rather than deceptive. None of her strategies worked. Her family stopped protecting her. Ava blocked her entirely. Ruth refused to speak to her for days. Harold told her she needed to seek professional help before she destroyed her entire future. Her workplace eventually became aware of her unstable behavior. A conflict involving Miles occurred near the parking lot, and HR placed her on temporary leave to prevent further disturbances. She finally moved out of her apartment and into her cousin's spare room, taking a retail job to recover from the financial damage she caused. As for me, I relocated to a new place, started rebuilding my social life, and slowly regained the sense of peace I lost without noticing. I didn't reach out to her. I didn't wait for updates. I didn't hold on to any version of her I once believed in. She faded into the background of my life, leaving behind only a cautionary reminder of how close I came to binding myself to someone who saw relationships as ladders rather than commitments. The prank I planned as a joke ended up saving me from a life built on deception. It exposed every truth I needed to see long before the wedding day arrived. And I walked away with the one thing Jenna never expected me to have: clarity.